Hey guys, Palsteron here. And today let's talk about the second balance manifesto, the one we've all been waiting for, regarding Archnemesis rares. So before we talk about my critique of this manifesto, which is going to be overwhelmingly positive, I want to quickly talk about a little bit of this sort of downer culture over the last few leaks. This is something that I myself experienced as well. As I saw the game, in my opinion, getting progressively worse and worse, I got a lot more cynical, a lot more negative. But as much critique as I throw at them, at the end of the day, I still understand that you also have to acknowledge when they do something good for the game, because otherwise all you're doing is just vent. And at that point, you're just not really saying anything. You're not giving anything constructive to the whole discussion. If you absolutely cannot stomach me talking positive about GGG, this is where you will have to click off, because this manifesto seems really, really good. Now, let's talk about the first obvious one. Archnemesis will be replaced with a new system. We don't know exactly what the system is. It is, I'm going to go over it, is a little bit more specified down below. Overall, we will not see Archnemesis mods anymore. And this is something I, for example, really needed to hear, because it seemed like they would double down on a lot of sort of decisions, just saying you think you do, but you don't. But now we can really see that they do want to get the game in a better state. Also, a kind of conspiracy theory I had for a long time was this thing where I thought Archnemesis was so baked into Path of Exile 2 that they can't really change it, so they have to kind of make it work. But they didn't, which I'm very happy about. Now, they do go over a lot of these issues that were introduced with Archnemesis. The one I think is a little bit more fluff, and I already talked about this on stream numerous times, the whole culling scenario where people felt like they need a color to kill their high-value Archnemesis targets. I've spoken to a lot of people who actually did the culling themselves, and they said that usually it wasn't even worth the time and effort to get a color into their map. So I have a little bit mixed feeling on that. I think the problem in general is more quantity itself, which we're going to talk about at the end of the video. But all the other issues were true. The mods were not really descriptive. You didn't really know what they're doing a lot of times because there was too many effects on top of each other. And the new goals are basically that the mods are simpler like they used to be, where a mod does one specific thing. Now, something that is more thematic. So, for example, they talk about a magma barrier. Now, Archnemesis, a magma barrier, meant a lot of things, a lot of effects crammed down at once. You didn't really know what they were, because magma barrier doesn't tell you a lot of these things like conversions or anything like that. But the new one will simply give the rare mob a magma barrier. Now, my personal biggest problem was the difficulty of Archnemesis encounters. And while this was not a problem 2 to 3 weeks into a league where you had more decked out characters and they already nerfed it a little bit, overall I felt like it would really stomp weaker builds. Meta builds wouldn't really have a problem with those encounters because they're numerically the best skills in the game currently, and they're refined by a lot of people over time. But when it comes to like wacky builds that Path of Exile is kind of known for, that Path of Exile's charm is known for, those builds would just take way more currency to get to work. So while we don't know exactly how the difficulties are tuned, I'm pretty damn sure that with this new system that will be addressed, which I'm very happy about. A pretty cool thing that they did is in the new system, they have a significantly higher pool of rewards, which is overall going to equal out like the spikes of crazy divine drops, right? The reward is now hidden, which I'm not really that interested in. I wasn't really ever interested in that whole culling scenario, but that definitely helps that stuff. I just like that the loot system will be a lot less spiky. One of the problems that is still not really addressed, though, is the whole issue with quantity and item drops in general. However, I will give them the benefit of the doubt here, because not only is there a potential for a 5th manifesto about drops, there's also the Eldritch Altar revamp, which might clarify that issue. Now, item rarity was never really an issue, but has now come to the forefront with scaling better with Archnemesis mods, and quantity kind of was always a problem. However, what a lot of people will make you think is that it's now a problem because of Archnemesis, and with Archnemesis, it will just go away. But Archnemesis is not really just the only problem that quantity have. There was always spikes and problems balancing around quantity, and I just feel like it's progressively harder and harder with more and more variables in the game for GGG to balance it. The game started out with an increased quantity support, which was basically mandatory on every single character. Then we had Bisco's Collar, which was completely OP for like 2 leagues without them really doing anything. And every build who didn't run it was basically just trolling. And then we also recently had the whole Scourge tower farming debacle. And defenders of Magic Find will always talk about these like isolated incidents, but in reality, quantity was always a problem. Now, when it comes to group play, it's even worse. For quite some time, they actually managed to kind of balance solo play because they made harder and harder content. They made stuff like Delirium, which scaled rewards very well with character power instead of making your character weaker and getting quantity. But there was always the problem with group play, because in group play, you're just basically invulnerable, you're dealing infinite damage, or you just have somebody in your group calling the monsters, right? So group play is just impossible to balance as well. Now, if you remember to last league, there was Empyrean Gaming who spoke out about the group play balance that was kind of done because they removed a certain multiplier that was there. Now, that was their attempt to kind of balance group play more than anything else, I assume. And that wouldn't have even been necessary if quantity was not in the game in the first place, because they have to balance around that fact. So then everybody who doesn't use it gets completely screwed over. And that is one of the things that happened last league. So that's my problem with it. It's just going to be impossible to balance. And you can see this in other games as well. Now, it also kind of, I just wanted to put this here, goes against the power fantasy. Now, I'm aware that this is super subjective here, but for me personally, I get less and less motivated to make builds if the end goal for a build is just stripping down the power, putting on shitty uniques that are basically the same for every single build, and just maximizing profit. At that point, it just feels like the game becomes more and more of a spreadsheet rather than a game. And I know that this is already a thing with games like ARPGs, where you want to maximize everything and you're just going to break it down to the atoms. But the problem just gets exacerbated so much. And you also get into this weird thing where if you cannot use these uniques, if your build, for example, is built around certain item interactions that doesn't allow you to use those quantity items, well, it's probably not going to be good enough, or could never be the best build for farming. So it just kind of makes build making obsolete. At that point, all you have to figure out is, what is my best vessel of a character to throw on all my Magic Find gear on? But overall, this manifesto makes me really, really excited. And if you're here for, like, I don't know, like pessimist porn, you're probably not going to be very happy with the next manifestos, because after reading this, I'm pretty damn sure we're on a really, really good course for 3.20. But let's definitely wait for the rest of the manifestos to settle. Let's also see. I really hope they're going to address the drops and they're not just going to let it play out for another league. Overall, I'm really, really happy. I think this is going to open up a lot more characters and a lot more skills in general. Obviously, I hope they also buff some skills along the way. What I really want to see from GGG for 3.20 would be a strong league. I already talked about this, but I want the league mechanic to be rather overpowered than underpowered. Because even if everything surrounding is not good, at least you can explore something new instead of basically playing a glorified version of standard. So I hope they're going to look at that. Even with the whole Archnemesis fiasco, I think that, for example, if Lake of Calandra was a lot better or more rewarding as a league, it wasn't like mineral pools and had just really bad layout, right? I think the league would have not been as negative. Still not great, but not as negative. We saw that, for example, in Sentinel. But yeah, those are my thoughts. And since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.